It's our first panel session. So I invite everyone back on stage who've given their presentation, and just wait, make sure everybody's back before we start. But so we can start looking at the questions now. I suggest we start with the hydrogen, and let's see what we have here. We got a question from Bruno Rodriguez, who's asking, how does H-Vision fit in the energy mix and the impact on CO2 emissions? So Alice, do you want to answer that, or Alice or Marcel?
I think I can answer the question. It is important in the energy mix, H-Vision, but it's, I think, I explained in one of the slides that the impact on the CO2 emissions is about 10% of the national industry targets that we have. So that is the big importance here. And the other is that we're going to replace that amount of natural gas in the refinery. So to start with, but also important is that we will kickstart the hydrogen economy by this project, because it's such a large-scale project, and we're going to build the infrastructure already that can be used later for other purposes, or maybe even green hydrogen. So.
Okay, thank you. That's good. We have another question here from Cobus Vermaak, who's asking, what do we think will happen to the fuel storage tanks over time? Do you think they'll all be demolished and rebuilt for hydrogen? I mean, are we going to go to all gas terminals? I mean, there will be some, as I think we discussed, there will be some smaller tanks for chemicals and things like this, and for the renewable fuels. But for these larger tanks, do you think that's the way it's going to go? Marcel, would you like to answer that first?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I think the storage of fuel will change. First of all, it will change. The components will change. That's our vision on that. So you'll get more drop-in fuels, as they are called, with biofuels and maybe even the synthetic fuels. So in the future, there will be more blending needed. And then it depends on the solution that really becomes the best solution and the largest solution. So if you have the LOHC solution, if that is a real competitive solution for large-scale import, then you can use large-scale tanks as well. If ammonia and liquid hydrogen really further develop, then of course you need new infrastructure, because storing at minus 253 degrees is a very special tank, as you all can imagine. And also the quantities that you need. So the 20 million tons of imports that are predicted by the Port of Rotterdam in 2050. Of course, that's very long, very far away, 2050, but those are immense amounts, and that will need millions of cubic meters of storage. So it is still very large scale. So I agree that in the start it will be 20,000 cubic meters, but at the end it will need to be 50, going up to 100,000 again.
Thank you. Okay, would you like to comment on that as well? Do you have any additional comments? Or?
No, I think Marcel did an excellent job at answering. Obviously, even closer than I am with respect to the industry and directly into the project. So nothing to add.
Okay. Just from my point of view, I'm interested because I have a shipping background as well as a storage background, and thinking of bunker fuels in the future. I can see that ammonia, is going to be could well be the fuel of the future for other areas, but for bunker fuel, I'm not too sure how much. There's an awful lot of expense the ship owners would have to do to put in ammonia to fuel their vessels. And methanol would be a lot cheaper, and that's another possible option, as we discussed, or whether it'll just go down the renewable fuel. But if they can make enough in time. But has anyone got any thoughts on that?
Well, I can, Mike, if nobody else, but then I'm more than happy to hear from Marcel as well. It goes back to our analysis and our work within Hydrogen Europe. Recently, there has been more and more stronger momentum in the maritime sector to look towards hydrogen and hydrogen-based fuels, and there is some market structuring that is taking place within Hydrogen Europe. Basically, Hydrogen Europe is putting together a group of industry players led by ship owners, ship manufacturers that are interested to develop those. And this has all been sparked by the detailed analysis that we've done, and we put it to the discussion, and we said, okay, what are the challenges that need to be achieved? And it is true that the maritime sector, and this is something everyone here probably knows, is extremely diverse. You can't speak of the maritime sector as you do for road transport, for example. It's not the same if you're talking about a supply vessel or a tanker or a cruise vessel. So the diversity in that sector means diversity in fuels. Not just diversity in fuels, but also diversity in the type of engine that they will use, whether they will continue to combust or whether they will switch to fuel cells, and which type of fuel cell and which fuel will it go to that fuel cell. So I think it's too early to find, even for us, and to say the future is going to be this. I think it will depend on many factors, and especially the type of vessel that is going to be used. But again, I come back to what I've said earlier. Initially, it's compressed liquid and ammonia that appear to be the most promising issues, and there are companies within the shipping sector that do agree and are working with us to see that through. We at this particular point, we keep an open mind to that.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to comment, or should we move on?
Yeah. Well, I'll just building on your comments. I think the shipping industry is always going to go for the most cost-effective solution, and IMO is a good example of that. I think then 5 years ago we probably would have thought LNG was going to play a bigger role, but the industry found a cheaper solution through kind of still using fuel oil as much as they can, and some are switching. So I think, as you said before, it's too early to make this call. It's going to depend on technology development, and ammonia or hydrogen is still very expensive. As you said, it would require a huge investment, and then regulation. I think when I look at my CO2 emissions, this is the part that I cannot abate easily. The ships that we use in our logistics, and there's no. I think the regulation will drive that. At some point, they'll force CO2 emissions to go down further, and that's when we will be forced, or the shipping industry will be forced to switch, even if it's more expensive. But that combination of technology and regulation is still, I think, too early in my mind to call what's going to happen 10 years from now. It's evolving quickly.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, so I agree with that. I think that from what I can see, because like I say, I do still follow the shipping quite a bit, that there a lot of companies are looking at both hydrogen and ammonia as being, or rather methanol and ammonia as possibilities. So you see some shipping companies that have converted some of their ships, or are converting some of their ships to ammonia, and a few ships to hydrogen, just trying to see which was going to methanol, just trying to see which ones suit more. But yeah, I agree. Okay, my next question I have here is for Anneli. You talked a lot about the storage, but of electricity. But how could you, in just a few words, say your opinion of where you think that is most going to affect our industry, the storage industry, the bulk liquid storage industry? At the moment, where you see that storage possibilities are the best solution. Which ones? storage energy?
Well, yeah, it's kind of a tricky question when we are coming from a technology neutral association. But what we usually like to emphasize from East side is that when we are looking at different solutions, then we would not lock ourselves only with one solution. And here we can see also from the Commission and from the Parliament that they are saying, please, let's not fixate ourselves only on one solution. Let us keep the discussion open and see what kind of development can be made. And if maybe there needs some kind of funding from the European side to look at different options to help the industry to decide what will be the best solutions. So for us, we definitely don't want to say that one or the other technology should lead the way, but we would like to say that market should decide, and we should we actually need to mark down the barriers we see at the moment. For example, to also look at different possibilities. Is it only funding? Is it a regulatory barrier? Is it for example, a barrier even like permits, for example, or having different kinds of projects launched? So sometimes it can even be as tiny as or as big as kind of a long process in one member state for trying to try out some kind of different solutions. So from East side, we see that market should lead the way, but we definitely have to pinpoint what are the barriers, and we need to overcome them and then see what will be the best solution.
Okay, thank you. So I was just thinking that there may be some bulk liquid storage places out there who would like to get involved in energy storage, but may not know who to talk to about it even, or which there's nothing really you can say at this stage. They have to wait to be approached by somebody.
Yes, indeed, because it also depends on the infrastructure, the situation. As we see in different member states, the situation is different. Today, we looked quite a lot on the Netherlands. And of course, the Netherlands has different kinds of how the Netherlands is, so to say. They have quite a lot of gas infrastructure, for example. In some member states, we have a different situation. So that's why it's difficult to say. But we have so many technologies that are also already out there or are at the moment researched and deployed. So yes, so that's why I think it should be some kind of like a tailor-made solution or a tailor-made approach.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so there's been quite a few questions about IT landscape, how the IT landscape can help in these various projects with H-Vision and some of the other projects. Maybe Alice, you could answer that initially. Where do you see IT can support the asset infrastructure of H-Vision?
The IT landscape.
Mm.
Yeah,
Is that something you want to talk about or not really?
Not exactly the question but well, I think that it is of course important if you increase this project into a national scale, then of course IT can help, or the data can help you finding the customers and the suppliers to connect those. And there we're working on that in a separate project. It is a sort of hydrogen bank that we call it, to have this exchange. But it is quite complicated. But you should do that. Compared to electricity now, you have to also need this marketplace, and in the future we need it for hydrogen.
Yeah, I guess the question is, with all these different players, and you're going to be moving all this around from refineries to storage, and storage to. There seems to be there needs to be an IT system somewhere that everyone's using, maybe to help. So that, but we haven't got to that stage yet, I guess. But that's
No, not in the Netherlands, but we are developing it, yes, because I call it the hydrogen bank, but it is more maybe an IT system. Yeah, but you need to make agreements about the price, about the source, the origin, where the hydrogen is coming from, what kind of price can it be a value, and how does this develop when, of course, sun increases or the wind is less, the dunkle flaute, so to say in Germany. That is quite complex, but we need to work on that. I see Alexander already agreeing with it.
No, absolutely. The energy system, as it becomes more integrated, it becomes more, in a way, complex. But that complexity leads to better optimization. We're talking about the significantly better optimized energy system, more efficient system as a whole. And that system efficiency is enabled through IT systems. It's not something that you pay attention manually and flip a switch. It's something that is monitored carefully with respect to supply and demand, with respect to prices, with buying and selling guarantees of origin that are time-stamped at the particular moment that they're time-stamped. So IT system will play a crucial role in the development of the energy system of tomorrow, more and more. What I said earlier about the renewable energy producer maximizing the value of the energy it produces through selling electricity when it makes sense to sell electricity, and producing hydrogen where it makes sense to produce hydrogen. These are all things that will be aided through data and IT systems, and I can only agree. But people are sometimes scared. They hear the word complexity and they get scared, but they should think of complexity in the other sense of optimization. This is an opportunity to optimize and maximize value and maximize efficiency from a system perspective, which is what we are seeing now.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to add anything on that, or should we go to the next question?
Yeah, maybe to add, because just to build on that, I think in the supply chains of today, it is more and more important. Information becomes more and more important. So the introduction of blockchain technologies we see already happening and is there. And I think specifically if we focus more on hydrogen, with the different origins of hydrogen, with the certificate of origin, where you have also the different quality types of hydrogen, that's where this supply chain will be quite complex. And I think the only way to really do it in a good way and in a long-term sustainable way is to do it in blockchains and in a really high IT involved environment.
Okay, yeah, well, good point. Okay, next question, which we have a question here from Richard Salmons asking, are there any EU grants like the 10-P system available to support research projects on development of hydrogen infrastructure?
I can take that one, Mike. I can take one. The keyword on that is both research and hydrogen infrastructure, and that's two different things. I would say that there absolutely is funding, and there's funding for research, and there's funding for development and deployment of infrastructure. And I would put that separately. There's funding for research in the form, most importantly, of the joint undertaking, the fuel cells and hydrogen joint undertaking, which will become Clean Hydrogen for Europe, of which Hydrogen Europe is the private part of that public-private partnership. We'll have a budget of more than 1 billion euros for development of research, so the development of technology. At the same time, there is significant budget put forward for the deployment of market-ready technology. So we are talking about mature technologies with high technology readiness levels to be able to play a role in the market. And that is the role of funds such as the 10E regulation, which recognizes hydrogen infrastructure and electrolyzer as distinct categories within the new 10E regulation and eligibility for funding, but also in the recovery and resilience facilities where hydrogen infrastructure plays a key role in the modernization fund, the innovation fund, the just transition fund. So there is significant opportunities now for the development of hydrogen technologies and for enabling hydrogen to finally play the role that it was promised and it is promising to play in the energy transition. And again, there is support coming from various directions. Now, just to also clarify the question between the difference between research on one side, yes, absolutely, and deployment of market-ready technologies, and that is also happening as well.
Thank you. And I just have another question in which I think I'll take because I think it's very much connected to the last question. But we have Aaron van Kampen asking, why would we need governments to regulate the energy transition? The industry is more than capably driven by business interests.
Yeah, I think I want to say something about it. Annelie, you were?
Yeah. Yes, well, maybe if I can take it. Yes, even if I don't know, maybe I mentioned it wrong, but definitely we don't need the government so much regulate the energy transition, but to remove the barriers. What we see at the moment is that when we even want to use these different technologies, there are so many barriers because the regulation is, so to say, a bit old. It was made when we had a different situation. Now, when we want to make the transition, we want to open the market, so to say, for different technologies. So when we are talking, for example, about different market products in the electricity market, so when we only have the products that are suitable for the current market participants, then we cannot see other market participants entering the market. So that's why we need to remove the barriers. Again, with energy taxation, as I said before, so if we have for energy storage devices double taxation, then we can see that the investors will not come along because they will see that they need to pay more for the device to be in the market and they get less revenue. So that will be not so appealing to invest into. And also, for example, about different permits. So if the permit process is very, very long, takes for years and years to go through just to get the permit, then also, again, it raises the question, who wants to invest in that project? So I guess it's more a question about removing the barriers and not so much local or national governments of regulating the transition. So yeah, there's a fine line.
Can I add to that? Because I completely agree. But I think that we need, it is on the financial side, on the regulation side, on the infrastructure also, because a lot of infrastructure, of course, is government owned, at least in the Netherlands, and I think to a lot of European countries. But also employment. We need, of course, to focus our whole economics in the future on this different type of work. So also, the education needs to be changed on that. And I don't completely agree with Annelie that it is more general. I think also on the local level of the local government and also on the national government, there is some work to be done there. And maybe as an example, and I was thinking previously about it when I heard the discussion. In the Netherlands, we have also in Rotterdam, we have a sort of accelerator, a project accelerator. It is an organization. I'm the chair of that, and we have the province there. We have the license organization there for the licensing, and also the municipality is there, and the national government, and a project. I also FOPAC once was there attending and explaining about their project and all the problems that they face, because it's always multidimensional. It's the finance, it's no budget for that, or it's expensive, it's new, it's riskful, there's no infrastructure, and you can have this, present your project there, and then these governmental organizations try to help within the lines of the regulations that we have currently. But of course, like Annelie is saying, also the regulations need to be more supportive, of course. But at least now we try to help a little bit. And for the permit side, for instance, that's for us, it's new. These very large electrolyzers for hydrogen. And our permit organization in the Netherlands or in Rotterdam is a bit, for them it's challenging because it's all new and it sounds dangerous and they are very reluctant in providing the permit. But since we have this presentation of one of the biggest projects in our organization, in this speed up organization that we have, they have a sort of hydrogen team organized now, and they dived into this in this project and all the risk that they face, and now they speed up the process at least. So I think for the short term, governments need to do some action, and also on the long term, like Annelies saying, to change the regulations, and then I think we can move and speed up towards achieving the climate goals.
Yeah. Can I add?
Yes, sure.
Just adding on what you two have said. I mean, I agree with both of you, but I think the governments are needed for two reasons. On the financial side, because hydrogen is going to compete in regulated markets like natural gas transportation or power utilities. So if it's regulated, you need a price and you need a government for that to set the prices. And secondly, the European funds that we talked about, those are critical for the development of some of these projects that are not economical now. And with the European funds, we're gonna make that happen. So that's where the government comes in again. And then is the issue of the permitting and standards that are not there yet at local and national level. In Madrid, we've the first hydrogen service station was built, was actually started a couple of months ago. It took 2 years, the permitting of that, because it was the first in the country. So anyway, there's a lot to do, and you need the regulators and the governments to help us, go through those barriers and remove them.
The truth, this is an interesting discussion, and everybody wants to say something because it is a core to what we're discussing. But the truth is there is a gap between low carbon technologies in general, hydrogen in particular, and their fossil counterparts. And that gap needs to be bridged somehow. We're seeing it now in the renewable energy generation capacity that we are now building. New renewable energy generation capacity in many places of the world is the cheapest new form. It wasn't the case 10 years ago. It required strong regulation to scale up and to bring cost competitiveness to that area and allow free competition to take place. And now probably renewable energy is able to outcompete their fossil alternatives. It's not the case for hydrogen. We need the same thing to happen. With that in mind, then you need regulation in one form or another to bridge that gap. How then you choose to bridge that gap? Through support measures, through targets, through taxation, through other things. It's a valid question. Both have advantages and disadvantages, through a carbon price as well. So yeah, there is a place for regulation, and I agree with everything that was said with respect to removing barriers and permitting. That is something that there's no comments I would add to that.
Thank you. Okay, are we finished on that topic? One more, which that's coming from me. But Olga, I just wanted to ask you, as a major pipeline company as well as storage, I understand, or everybody says to me that hydrogen, is quite easily to move around if you through LNG gas lines. Is there much to do to convert a LNG pipeline to be able to take hydrogen? And that was my first question. And then the second part would be all your other pipelines, your oil-related pipelines. Are you already looking at repurposing some of those lines, or and building more maybe hydrogen-suitable pipelines?
So I'll start with your second question. No, we're not thinking about repurposing our pipelines yet, our traditional oil product pipelines yet, because there's still many years to come using them. I mean, there's no real alternative for jet fuel and even diesel and petrol. I mean, the fleet is huge, so there's going to be many years needing those pipelines. I mean, we're looking closely to things like what Marcel mentioned before. Hydrogen. Will we be able to use those lines to transport hydrogen in a liquid form? We'll see, but I think it's many years away. So we're not thinking, we're thinking about it, but we're not doing anything yet. Now, regarding your first question, we at Exolum, we don't manage, we don't have gas pipelines, but familiar with the territory. I mean, you can inject hydrogen at a certain percentage, and there are different studies, 15 up to 15, even 20%. You don't have to do any major retrofits. If you're going to go above that, then you run into metallurgy issues, and then even your seals, your compressor seals, etc. You need to work on those. So I mean, the way I see it is as a first step, because the industry, I mean, as Marcel was describing, we take in different steps, and the first step is using the existing pipeline that we have, and there's still a lot of room between 0 and 15% without really needing to do major investments. And as you learn, I think we will be doing new things and probably building tailor-made pipelines for hydrogen. But I don't know. I'm sure you guys might want to comment on this as well.
Marcel, do you want to comment on that at all?
Yeah, maybe to add, and I fully agree with what Jorgo was saying. I think an interesting here to share is a project that was done by the GasUnie in the Netherlands between Yara and Dow in the south of the country, where they've just transformed an existing pipeline from natural gas into hydrogen. And they changed all the joints and and they really prepared it well. But their conclusion is that it's actually easy to do. It's they didn't need to change all the gaskets and all the parts that they did. So that's why they're very confident that in countries where there are a lot of pipelines, of course you can take a few out of the service of natural gas and put them into hydrogen. That is a real good solution to have 100% hydrogen connection. And then of course the discussion is still on the table of which grade and what quality of hydrogen do you want to push through those pipelines. But at least that is a way to work on it. I don't see it as a solution for the whole of Europe, or maybe in the future, maybe a longer term future, because I fully agree that the pipelines that are there today will be needed for quite a bit of time. And then blending it into those existing networks is then another option.
Yeah, one last thing on this one is the uses of hydrogen. I mean, if you're using it for heating or for, then you can mix it with natural gas. When we're talking about mobility, you need 100% purity for fuel cells, and that requires a completely new infrastructure.